Welcome back to MB Capital Strategies. Today we continue with a portfolio update. This update covers the month of December. Let's take a look at how the portfolio has developed. A total of €1,330.57 was invested. The value as of December 1st was €73,759. The capital gain for this period was minus €365. Dividends realized amounted to €373 and a total of €602.75 was realized. In terms of gains, what were my top movers? Shangqi Copper with 40%, Inquest with 40%, Vale Indonesia with 26%, Valterra Platinum, Fresnillo and Bayern. We'll come back to these securities in a moment. First, let's take another look at the activities. Let's take a look first. My buyers and my sellers, I bought more shares of China Mingyu. I also increased my position in Panoro Energy. I bought more shares of Equinor, Suncor Energy, Petrotal and also Really Trust. I sold my shares in Nippon Yusen and I also sold Deutsche Pfandbriefbank. I had bought Bank of China and Costco Shipping, each again with €100. I also don't buy in €100 tranches as I mentioned before. I sell €35.97 Vodafone. I had bought Petrobras, Ryzen, Pfizer, B2 Gold. I had sold Banco Santander, Bitex, Dollar General, Baytex Energy, Trulieve Cannabis, Vermilion Energy, Tenaris, Merck, Neste, the Walt Disney Company, AGL Energy, Exelon Co. Again, I bought BSF, Realty Income, Pembina Pipeline and Oneok. Ares Capital, Brasil Agro, AKBP, Essential Utilities, Blue Owl Capital, BP, Enegas. Sold Vodafone, Merck, RWE bought. China Resources, Power, Artico, Agro and Oneok. You can see that each time it's around €100. Why did I sell? Simply because I wanted to realize some profits here. True Life Cannabis was a small speculation of mine anyway, and I was also partially invested in Banco Santander with over 100% profit. That is exactly why I ultimately decided to simply sell the asset and take that entire capital so I could reinvest it much more effectively elsewhere in the market. We can take a quick look at the entire position. Exactly, ideally since the purchase, of course. Exactly, so with Exelon it was only 5% that I realized. It was simply a small position, and the money is better off elsewhere. I actually realized a loss with AGL Energy, but I also received dividends. Exactly, so with AGL Energy I realized a loss of about 62 cents including selling fees. Then I got Walt Disney as a gift. I actually received the share. And in total it was €10 that I realized because, as I said, I had received the share as a gift. From Trade Republic with Nesta I realized a total profit of 80%, amounting to €66.76. Here too the business model simply no longer convinced me, which is why I sold. Or rather, the latest figures for Mea Gruppe were a bit of speculation, or yes, they were simply at their lowest when I bought and I just took a bit of profit. I took home a total net profit of €13.64. Not a big profit, but here too I would have just taken the capital right away and invested it elsewhere. Then Tenaris SA, where I realized a 10% profit. Then Vermilion Energy with a total of 24% profit that I realized, amounting to €14.32. True Life Cannabis was just a speculation anyway. Here with 25%, €14.50 in profit realized. Berkeley Energy with 26%, that's €30.82. General, I took 58% with €86, and here as well, €2. 10 cents per share in dividends was just a bit too low for me, given a share price of €116. Here I decided to simply take the profits and say, okay, I'll go back into high yield, shift more into value stocks. Here too, I simply increased my position, when Dollar General was more or less at the bottom. Then Bitex with 70%, I realized at €53.05. Again, in my opinion, the money is better invested elsewhere. Transalta realized with 69% at €23. So as you can see, it's not always about the large amounts, but here too, like with Banco Santander, I simply 170% buying more didn't really, let's say make sense or pay off for me, because, well, I would just completely ruin the increase. The dividend is quite nice, but if I can't really buy more in a meaningful way, then it doesn't really do much for me either. If by doing so I would completely ruin my entry point, I probably would have held a larger position here. With 400 euros, I definitely would have held on, but here a 24 euro gain doesn't really make much of a difference. That's why I decided to take the 100% profit. Then with Deutsche Pfandbriefbank, I've actually held that one for a bit longer, and here I actually realized a loss, with a minus of 0.03%, totaling minus €1.53. Back then, I speculated that they would simply pay out a dividend, which they are doing again now. But ultimately, it's only a small amount, and the company doesn't look fundamentally strong either, which is why the risk would have been too high for me. I also sold off my Ponyosen. Back then, with 1%, it was simply one of my first positions. And here too, I said it doesn't make sense to keep such a small position. That's why I just did a bit of decluttering. And since the purchase, as I said, my portfolio looks like this. Out of 76,904 euros and 71 cents invested, 71,432 euros, a price gain of 3,614 euros and 57 cents, a return on investment of 11.82%, dividends of 5,150 euros and 70 cents, and realized gains of 13 euros and 46 cents. My top overall movers are Bresnilo with 397%, Shangqi Copper, China Life Insurance, Barrick Mining, and Xpeng. As for the largest positions, nothing has changed with CMB Tech. In any case, in the next video, I'll go into a bit more detail about that, and I'll talk a bit more about what has changed in my portfolio and maybe also what my plan is soon, or how I now plan to align my portfolio for 2026. In the end, I like the portfolio as it is, with just a few individual adjustments. I will probably sell some of the small speculative positions during the early year rally if I am in profit with them. There are simply a few speculative positions, like for example a cannabis stock that I still have, and also a biotech company, and I just want to eventually sell those as well. Exactly, I had actually already shown the purchases. They were primarily just additions to existing positions. Now, of course, we come to the main important topic for you and also for me, namely for the whole dividend for 2025 for the period of December. Specifically, I received 373 euros and 84 cents, a total of 85 payouts. Let's also take a look at the largest positions here, which include Nordic American Tankers, among others. I'll just open it up right now so you can see how the dividends compare to my initial investment. Otherwise, BWLPG brings in relatively little, then International Seaways Energy, Kraft Heinz, we can take another look at that, NPC Container Ships, BWL, PG. Yes, they weren't that high in December anyway. Let's also include Zim Integrated Shipping, UPS with 8 euros and 30 cents, we'll add that as well, and Tor, 2 of those each. Once because of Scalable and once because of Trade Republic. We just need to take a quick separate look at that. That's why there are 2 distributions. Then Helmrich and Payne with 3 euros and 46 cents. Dorian LPG, also one of my largest positions, with another 36 euros. Of course, we'll gladly take another look at that. Yes, those were my highest dividend payers, and that's all primarily in the shipping and pipeline sector. Nordic American Tankers has developed as follows for me. So far, I have invested 247 euros and 52 cents. I have received dividends totaling 36 euros and 70 cents. So that's already quite a nice, solid value. And I even bought more at one point, on May 14th. So now, in a sense, the full distribution will actually only come for the period 26. If we just take a quick look at the whole thing, dividends before tax, 36 euros and 70 cents divided by my invested amount, which is 247 euros. 52 times 100, Nordic American Tankers has paid me a 14% yield on cost. Then we come to BWLPG, and I have received 108 euros and 35 cents. Now, of course, in general, you could just calculate that based on my invested amount. And then we can take a look at what I actually received last year. So, in total, 108 euros and 35 cents. And my entry point, or rather the amount invested, is €535.84. Times 100, I have already received a 20% yield on cost from BBLPG. And the dividends were €1.17 for 2025. So now we would have to calculate what I actually received in 2025. That's basically the €1.17 divided by my entry price of €7.14 and then multiplied by 100. So I received a 16% yield on cost in dividends from BWLPG, which is already quite substantial. Of course, that's gross. Then we have International Seaways. Here I'm at €57.66. My entry price is €34.29. We can also just take a look at that here. That was the total dividend for 2025, €2.54. And the entry price was €34.29. Multiplied by 100, I actually received a yield on cost of 7% with this stock. With energy stocks, I have already received a total of €70.45. And I actually only bought the stock in 2025. I just need to quickly check that again. Okay, 24. I actually already had the stock in my portfolio. Exactly. And here it's basically like this. €1.04 was paid out in 2025. Here too, of course, you could calculate the whole thing, which is what we have now. Let's just quickly do that. So €1.04 divided by €10.55 times 100. That brings us to 9.85%. And overall, we've already received 89. So I simply had a slightly higher entry point. That's what happened. So far, the dividend has been a bit lower, and in the end, Kraft Heinz with €31.97. My entry price was €25.50 per share, and €1.50 was paid out. 39, which corresponds to a dividend yield of 5.45%. MPC Container Ship, total dividends received of €60.47, invested €394.18. Dividends here were 24 cents for the year 2025. So, in the end, we're just going to go through everything. My goal is generally to be above 8% yield in cost. Of course, you can look at that at the end. Or when we do the complete analysis, I'll just go through everything and show you how it actually turned out. In the end, I simply add up all the months based on my statements that I received. And then we'll also take a look at what's already planned for 2026, because today we're only looking at what's ultimately planned for January, and I have that. Now a dividend yield of 16% has been received. BWLPG has already calculated it. Now we have Zim here. I received a dividend of €55 here. And that's when the payout started in 2025. €3.84. Again, it's the same scenario here. €3.84 divided by the purchase price of 82 times 100. I received a dividend yield of 27% on this stock for 2025. Now we still have UPS, a total of €36.45 in dividends. And a total entry price of €674.76. I haven't received full shares here yet. Exactly. And then actually one of my best stocks, and that would be Torm. Here, with €71.56 in dividends, invested €754.05. A total of €1.77 was paid. Paid for the year 2025, €1.77 divided by €15.71 times 100. That would give me a dividend of 11.26%, so a yield on cost. And with Doran LPG, I received a total of €410.32 in dividends, with an investment of €1,759.84. Then again here as well. €2.19 that were distributed. Divided by an entry price of €16.41 times 100, I have a yield on cost of 13% here. And that's exactly what makes the dividend strategy so effective, especially if you can buy in at a favorable time and simply pick things up when they're at the bottom. And then you can actually sometimes even be doubly rewarded, like in this case I just showed you. That was basically a complete introductory video. Again, Now let's briefly take a look, as I already mentioned, at how things are looking for January 2026. For January 2026, we have a total dividend that is forecasted to be €301. Let's just take a look at how things will develop in January and which of my holdings will be the highest payers. So Total Gabon, I can already say, will not be paying out. That's simply because last year they paid a special dividend and therefore paid out twice. Normally they pay out in June, but still, it's a very high amount. Otherwise, here we have €16 from Dividend, 15 from Split, and €17.61 from Medical Property Trust. Global Medical REIT with €11, €5.93 from BCE, €11.42 from CMB Tech, then €16 from Tiger Brands, €14 from Enel. Exactly, and otherwise, it's actually mostly smaller amounts, to be honest. Right, and €3.19 from TC Energy as well. That's planned for January 2026. As I said, the next video will definitely follow, where I'll go into much more detail in general. That would be it for this part. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave me a like and comment on the video, so that we can interact, exchange ideas, and keep each other up to date. Maybe share how you do things, or let me know if there's a stock I should add to my portfolio or take a look at. And otherwise, if you're not a subscriber yet, I would be happy if you became one now. I'd say, see you in the next video. I wish you successful investing.